So as you may remember, I'm still working. I've been working for the past 8 years on a census of the first edition copies of the Wikipedia. And the idea originally was to have some sort of a map where the copies are prevalent. And more or less this has been achieved over the course of today using NodeGo. I'll show you eventually how it looks, but it's been quite a tiring task. It's quite 4 days, especially since I realized the data, the way at least how I've been collecting them, are totally unsuitable for any visualization task at all. Just to give you an idea, is if I have say a list of owners and a few paragraphs of a particular copy, they may not be in any chronological order. They might be information sort of the person follows after the another. Sometimes completely unclear who's when an owner owns something or where the person is located, and all this had to be sort of sorted out in the past few days. Therefore, I had to scale down the number of copies I used from around 400 to some 30 copies, and this will be a major task for the future server to figure out how to deal with it more efficiently or in more economic ways, because I have around 200 data points for each copy, excluding the individual information about every single page in the copy, which is the additional 500 data points. And I've got 400 copies, and most of this has to be done manually. It's difficult to train and teach a research assistant. So as you can imagine, there will be lots of typing on my side in the future. And there were some issues about how to export things from OpenRefine once things were cleaned up into a KML format to method. But luckily, today I turned to NodeGo, which sort of solved lots of the issues I was facing yesterday. There will be more work, but you will see that out based on this. So here are two different issues of the first edition, and they differ only how the bottom part, whether it has 3 lines or 2 lines. 2 lines is sort of sold by many booksellers who are and while the other one was sold by several. And the received knowledge among historians of science, those are the Smith copies, were intended for sale on the continent. And I'll show you how this might be demonstrated in the visualization that I have. So I'm not sure how to properly scale it, but
with the view you can zoom out.
Excellent. So here is a list of 28 copies, and when the miracle happens, you see a large map with larger than the screen. And I don't know how to do these things here, because the minus button is on the side.
So drag over window and expand the window.
Yeah.
If you go view full screen, enter full screen.
And full screen?
Yeah.
Another miracle.
Wonderful. You clearly see I'm not a happy person. Okay, so this is a map of all the current locations and sort of movements of the copies of this small sample. And if, this is for the whole period from the publication on July 5th, 1687 until say the year 2020. And once you start scrolling back, the copies start disappearing or moving away from the United States to Europe eventually. So this sort of shows that the copies, of course, were present mostly in Europe, but on the continent, the transatlantic sale started only in the late 18th century. And once you start looking here on the continent, you can just go to the very time when the book was published. Just here. Should have disappeared by now, all the copies. here at some point in the class. Okay, yes. So this is, we have some information about the year 1687, the number of copies appear in various libraries. And when you make sub-selection only for those that were considered for the UK market, and that would be copies, the Bibliopolis, and selecting them all except for US copies. Then you should get what I normally see, and you don't get anyone to see. I should have recorded it. Okay, now it's there. So you can see that none of the, except for one exception, none of the EB copies were not on the continent ever. They only went to the United States right away, so they were in the UK. The only exception is this one particular copy by Sylvester Rattray, and he went to study tonight and most likely bought the copy from England. So that's sort of a demonstration of what I can see from the visualizations, and I hope there will be more once it's all. So that's all from my side.
Very fast.
Perfect. I'm going to stand up because of that. So, visualizing a bibliography. As many of you know, we had nothing 2 months ago. Definitely nothing. We didn't even have a database, we had no book. And then we started collecting books from bibliography. Those are all books about and containing letters. We collected now for 2 months. 2 of my colleagues went to Oxford to collect the letters, created a database, very fast, very dirty, and we came up with some questions that we wanted to eventually solve here. The main research question was, if most of the books were published after 1600 posthumously, here Professor made a short count of per hand of 297 letters and thought, they all seem as if they were published posthumously after 1600. Is this true, and can we create a visualization that answers our questions? That was kind of the main idea. Then we had, of course, minor objectives. We wanted to have a quick visualization of where and when these letters were published, actually the books containing letters. And if there is centers of publication, which obviously they are the usual centers of publication. On the other hand, I also had some pedagogical objectives here. And me personally, and many of the people I know have never worked with so many titles. We already have 2,000 and I want to go further. So we actually wanted to learn how to work with the big database, which software to use. Bridging the gap between humanities and visualization tools. I like the word gap a lot, and that was actually the purpose of coming in, seeing how we can combine these 2 parts. Of course, taking inspiration from all your projects, because as I saw, many of the problems that arose here are going to be problems that we're going to get as soon as our database gets a bit bigger. And personal objectives, of course, me, myself, learn how to work with visualizing tools, dive into the humanities world as a mathematician, of course, also in the visualization world, and hopefully being able to contribute in somehow, some way. So, I came with this database, the Zotero database, made with these 3 bibliographies, the Esterman, the Arenhold, and the Mollyhausen. Collected, put them on. Many of them had Google Books links, and of 2,000 books, 1,200 nearly have an online available copy. What I had to do, first of all, work on data. Actually, when I came here and I saw what I had to do with all the data, I said I would never end up with a visualization. So much to clean, so much to put on. Fortunately, it didn't end up like that, but still, I had to take a subgroup of data. Many of our books had a lot of authors, it was complicated. Many had a lot of publication locations, which could have been complicated. So we just took one listed author, one listed location. It was around the half, so around 1,000 of those books had one single author, one single location. Then I had to clean the data, standardize all the names and location. They were written in Latin, they were written in other languages. They had problems, some had apostrophes, some had signs that the computer would recognize. That had to be cleaned. Furthermore, the data was also not so complete. We didn't have numbers of dates of death of the authors, which is rather important if you want to see if the book was published posthumously. And coordinates. I didn't know that we needed them, but yeah, every location, of course, needs a coordinate to get the map in a map. So that had to be implemented. And then, of course, see if it was published posthumously or not. I started with a quick visualization of where I went. That's very simple. I use Palladio. The size of the nodes, as you can see, are proportional to the amount of publications. I had different map types. Glauco presented me with a map. It's a nice map type that I fell in love with and only used them from that moment on. We inserted it was automatically with Palladio. I didn't take any merit for that, but a timeline slider underneath, and a distribution of publication numbers in a specific place through the years and the time. You're going to see it afterwards. So this is not so significant, but a very nice map. I really like this layer of, it's called watercolors, and I thought it was very nice to present, to show what it is. You got here the different points, you could touch on Dublin, you saw that one book was published in Dublin. A bit more serious came this one, which is a bit better, let's say. Again, as you can see, it's a bit light, but here we have, you can select a certain period of time in the timeline. You see how many books were published during that period, in that timeline. You can save it. And you see that the other problem should integrate is that our database is not so big and it's very biased. So, of course, we took the geographers coming from the Netherlands, and, for example, and a lot of our publications are in the Netherlands. We want to implement it with Italian ones, and we hope that there will be more service in Italy afterwards. We're gonna see that. Next step was, this is the same visualization this time here underneath in the timeline. You can select a certain location, Venezia, and you see at what time, what publications, what things were published in Venezia. This is very simple, where I mean, nothing too complicated. After that, we moved to posthumous publication, which I presented yesterday. A very graph. It was still a bit, wasn't so nice. It was still only one color. It got better, I can assure you. Okay, it was parallel coordinates through raw. You have on the left side, we've got death dates. On the right side, we've got publication days. Every edge is going to be a book. Inclination of the books visualizes whether the book was published post-mortem. Positive slope means post-mortem, negative slopes means before this. And it turned out something like that. So, I repeat, green is true, which means post-mortem. Red means the author was still alive, and blue is if the book was published at the same year where the author died, and we're not really sure if it was, if it was 2 months later, 2 months before the author died. We see that not so many books are published post-mortem. So a research question actually was not right. But at least we got the answer that it wasn't right. However, the gap that we see between, let's say, half of the 19th century, 18th century up is mostly because our bibliographies didn't contain books in that period. It's not that we have things. So it's a lot of matter of data, which data we have. But I think this is pretty representative to show that most lines are pretty straight, they're not big angles, so it means that the books were published probably 2 years before, 2 years after the death of the author, but mostly before. The author knew that he was going eventually to die, and the family or whoever thought it was a good time to publish all the letters he sent around. I think this was very nice graphic. From that, we go just to the post-mortem. Here we see that also from the middle of the 18th centuries onward, there's an increase in the gap between post-mortem publications. Like in between 18th and let's say 18th 17th century mostly. We have post-mortem publication just a few years after the death of the author. While the further and later we go, the more the books were published of authors that were centuries before. We did not know that, we did not expect that. It was an interesting data that we were not working on. What you see on top is 2000, it's a dummy variable. I just created a book that was published by a dummy author created in 2000 just to have the two lines aligned because we had the problem that they were not aligned. I actually have another dummy down at 1200, which is not very important at the moment. What we got from that? We got that. No significant increase in post-mortem publication after 1600. I'm happy at least that I can go back with an answer. Unfortunately, the answer is no, but we can also learn from a no. And, as I said before, many publications near the death date of the authors. Furthermore, a slight increase in publication of older books from the 18th century onward. Significant enough? We are not so sure. We're gonna increase our data sets and see if that actually happened or not. It's just a problem of which data we're considering. What are the next steps? Implementation of the database with other bibliographies, firstly two from Italy. Implementation of leftover data in already existing visualization. I guess that's probably what I'm going to do once I go back and start implementing the other data that we left out from our sample and start seeing if that happens. Creation of new visualization. I had actually the idea of the half circle, which they helped me a lot in how to visualize it better and create. I would like to have the angles of these lines represented in a half a circle, where the 90 degrees, of course, means the date of birth equals the date of publications. In that sense, we've got Carlos and Bernard, it looks like an open book kind of. On the left side, we've got authors that published the book while still alive, and on the right side, authors of books that published them not alive. Of course, it is not possible that we've got lines going here, because that would mean. But we're going to see that most of the books are probably here around. This is not based on data, it's just a mock-up. Most books are going to be around the death date, and for them, of course, lines that are bigger means more books published in that period. That's kind of it. If you have any question, if you need something else, just write me an email. That was mine. We still have another project.
All right. As we really know from yesterday, we didn't actually provide an actual presentation, but we a little bit started from scratch and trying to think about more in general about how to visualize this collection of letters from this really big database, which is the early modern letters online. So what we started from is looking at this a little bit at this tool that Howard presented to us as at the current interface. Scholars are accessing these letters. And one of the main problems is that the normal way that scholars access to these letters is by this search, and they have no instruments to be able to explore the data in a visual way. So yesterday we had a little discussion about how to which are the main dimensions we wanted to explore about this database and in general about the correspondence database. And what we figure out from a first discussion, we identified 4 main dimensions, which are the geographical level, the temporal level, people, which are all different authors involved in the correspondence, and the languages in which the letters are written. So one of the first things we realized was a number of uncertainties related to this kind of data, and the first one was related to the geographical level. So what we try to distinguish is 2 different levels based on the modern cartography and historical one, trying to understand which are the differences and how this the correspondence evolve in time, as also the geographical configuration evolves. So from the data point of view, what Glauco can explain a little bit more, we use this 2-level visualization, trying to a little bit make more consistent and to overlap these 2 different geographical dimensions. So this is our first mock-up, and it highlights at first the contemporary geography, and the dots are placed roughly following the geographical locations of countries in order to have an approximate view of the difference in size to represent the letters that are sent and received from the country. From this view, the user can switch also to the historical one, highlighting a really different aggregation of countries, and to be able to see also like geographical units instead of actual borders, such as the Holy Roman Empire or Prussia, that doesn't exist anymore. And the idea was to be able also to switch from this view, which highlights this geographical units, which are comprised of different sub-units, through this manual visualization of the hierarchical levels, geographical hierarchical levels. So at a certain point, if the user wants to explore, for example, within the Holy Roman Empire, a subnode is able to compare one subnode from one cluster to other metanodes. So this is to keep like a rather simplified version and to be able to expand one metanode at a time. A second uncertainty we figured was related to the temporal one, and especially related to the fact that the temporal gaps in the database generally have numbered the geographical gaps, meaning that we have more data at the geographical level than at the temporal one, because we don't have lots of really precise dates of these letters. So once we want to explore these two dimensions altogether, we have this problem of matching the amount of data we have in the map and in the timeline. And to kind of approximate a little bit more this thing, we thought about also representing the degree of fuzziness of uncertainty related to selected time periods that can be selected through the timeline at the bottom. This, of course, to come to terms with different calendars that are overlapping and trying to little bit reach a more robust database. And in some cases, you also see this missing data. Since it's a really exploratory mock-up, we also thought about some interesting other data points we wanted to explore that we currently don't have in the current database. So the gaps that we have might be already filled by some scholars trying to infer the temporal range in which the letters have possibly been written. A second view is related to people, and we wanted to explore the difference in the correspondence between single individual authors using this a sort of Gantt-like diagram to highlight the correspondence among the different authors that are represented by the horizontal bars. Each bar also includes the vertical colored lines, each one representing one single letter, in this case classified by topic, color-coded by topic. Also, as I said before, we don't have this data yet, but we thought it would be quite interesting to also explore this categorization. The different, so this is a more view of this visualization highlighting the correspondence between these different authors. And this way we can switch both from the topic categorization, which you can see the legend at the top, and the languages. So you can switch and to highlight both the different topics and the different languages letters are written. You can of course filter and select single person by just typing on the search pane in the top. For example, here just highlighted correspondence of Comenius, and by selecting one single letter, it's possible to see the thread. So what is the thread between letters that have been sent and received? So what is the reply to which letter is a reply to another one? And to see also if the topics and the languages are matching across these threads. This is of course just a kind of exploration. We still don't have the data about the topics, but we thought it would have been interesting if we had to explore it that way. Another from this view is also possible by clicking on a single person to highlight the symmetry between the authors and recipients. So to have a sort of more detailed view without the chronological view, but to expand a little bit more on the single authors and to see which are the preferred recipient, the preferred correspondence. And if there is a symmetry, so if, for example, Hartley seems to write a lot of letters while people don't generally reply a lot to him. This is because of a number of reasons, but the visualization allows also to see if a certain person plays a certain role also in this collection. And at the same time, you can also see a sort of aggregate view of, as I said, the preferred correspondence. For example, in this case, is John Drury, and to see how much is the share of his entire correspondence related to this preferred correspondent. A third view is related to languages. As we noticed that there were quite a relevant number of letters that were written in multiple languages. So what we wanted to see is two things. One is a simple one, so which are the languages that are most represented in someone's collection, and on the other hand, which are the co-occurrence of language across in the same letters. So how many letters share the same combination of languages? So we just try the first sketch of this data to see this. Actually, this is Hartley correspondence. Of course, English is the main language, but there's a really strong connection, a really strong occurrence between German and Latin. And of course, this co-occurrence graph can be also explored in a chronological sense and can be also compared across collections to see if there's a difference and what kind of languages are more represented. So just to conclude, a few takeouts we have from this session is to, of course, to expand our the visualization and interaction to explore the data and to evaluate also with other case studies in a more consistent way. To add also the possibility to encourage scholars to build also a more robust and a more comprehensive database, adding some, for example, the inferable date ranges, classification of topics, the length of letters, which could be quite useful in the symmetry view, and the language share in multi-language letters. So to see also how much is for example, in the co-occurrence, how much is one language represented, what is its share. And that's it. This is just to use this visualization as a motivation for scholars to fill in the gaps in the database and to contribute to the general project of mapping this correspondence.
It's not a question, it's more a comment. What I really like in this project, I mean, it's not the project itself, but these conclusions about visualization. So, because, well, sometimes I say that it's not just about visualizing data visualization. And in that case, you say, okay, visualization can be, something motivating for filling the gap, and that's interesting. I mean, you see that there are some also. Okay, so in a way, you generate data that doesn't exist yet. So it's more than you are not visualizing data because they don't exist. So visualizing what is not existing is. But more than that, I mean, there are also in the other visualizations, you really you took into consideration data that really don't exist, not gaps in the database. Other kind of data that were not maybe even considered before, then just because you have a picture, you have an image in mind, then maybe will be collected in the future. So visualization came, we often complain because normally people think that visualization comes at the end after, in that case, visualization comes before the data. For me, it's, it's wonderful because, it's even before data exists. And so
I'd
it's
like
much more than I hope.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce that point. In fact, I've been thinking for a while about using these kind of Gantt charts to provide an orientation of new users to MLO, to the lifespan and the distribution of letters across that lifespan. And this was the first idea which was kind of thrown into the pot, but the notion was black vertical lines, because all you're doing is indicating where the letters are. And this notion of using color coding to code for general topic was introduced behind my back, as it were, by Carlo, I think. The further you step back from the data that you know well, the more useful that's going to be. And since we're talking about stepping very, very far back from data which any individual scholar knows, for our purposes, that's going to be very useful. It seems to me we now need a pilot project, actually we need a series of pilot projects. The first project we need is to see whether we can agree with Guy's group, who are also talking about providing an ontology for the topics which come up in books so that we can share an ontology. I don't think that's a utopian aspiration. I think there's a strong evidential basis for that in the way library catalogs are set up, in the way book catalogs are set up, in the way book auction catalogs are set up, the way in which the university curriculum is structured, and so on. So there's plenty of basis on which you could design a robust and durable model for that kind of broad-based topic analysis. And then pilot projects to possibly starting with correspondence for which we already have abstracts of individual letters, so you can just sort of scan through and have a first rough assessment of what the range of topics are in there, and to display the utility of this thing. So that becomes a whole other part of our data inputting sort of interface when people are cataloging correspondences. The up-to-date view would be yes, okay, keywords and abstracts perhaps if you're generating a fairly lush catalog, but also these topical keys which are machine readable. But then, of course, you can also imagine the kind of topic modeling that Charles and his group have been working, also being calibrated, not to look for discussions of the rings of Saturn, or even for planetary astronomy, but just for astronomy. Now, that's a relatively easy topic modeling task. You search through multilingual lexica associated with the kind of terminology which is bound to come up when people are discussing mathematics in general, and the application of mathematics to astronomy in particular. One could imagine automatically, this kind of topic tagging automatically generated from free text by the right kind of topic modeling system, and then you could imagine large catalogs of already machine readable text being generated, at least as it were, as an addition, as a preliminary approximation, making all of that material much more usable to scholars. So we begin to sort of triangulate between all these different projects and feed off one another. So there's a feedback loop between the scholarly side and the interaction design side, but there's also then feedback loops between people working on books, people working on letters, people working on full text, people working on structured data, and so on.
thinking again about motivation of contributions, is there any received wisdom in how you use visualization of gaps and absences or kind of opportunities for participation to motivate that? For example, around WikiLeaks and the practice of sanitation. Are there good examples from a visualization perspective?
Well, I don't have a clear like specific answer. Like in this case, it was more to think about what we could do with letters in general, discussing with, and so yeah, there might be just yeah, there's certainly are.
But it's certainly in general, it's one of the reasons why you do visualization. I mean, it's quite, even in the literature, in data visualization, so it is one of the components of the strength of the visual language is that is, the rhetorical, narrative, emotional dimensions of the visual language are able to engage people more than other languages and to motivate people in interactive with that interface. So I think it's part of what it's part of the contribution that in general data visualization information design can bring. So yeah, it's more a statement of something that is part of the contribution.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add something about the heuristic value of visualization in this case, because I think it's really fundamental to have these tools to support editing data, which is not only maybe filling the gaps that you can see or just completing information that you find through the analysis that is not very well related with what you know. But since I'm interested in you're mentioning ontologies, for my interest, I'm interested in ontologies, linked data, and the use of visualization for exploring this kind of stuff, which is a nightmare because the model itself, being based on triples, it's ultra multidimensional. So and plus it's spread in many different data sources. I would also like to see these tools as a way, thanks to the power of visual language, to make this huge amount of information much easier to access and estimate and evaluate with reference to your data sets. Because also when we were doing this quick reconciliation with VIAF and GeoNames, it's always kind of difficult and boring, honestly, to try and figure out what is interesting for your data set, while with visual means it would be much easier. So I completely support the idea of also editing in a very general sense through this kind of tools.
So can you expand on that a little bit, how visualization would help in reconciling Ricardo's raw linear graphical data with the
For instance, using the same visual metaphor or visual models that we suppose scholars using this future system will be used to explore similar dimensions in external datasets that are completely unknown. So, for instance, if I have some potential matches in VIAF for a very common name, and I can see this name characterized through, let's say, a timeline, and using other metadata that are contained in VIAF for each record should be, let's say, indications of professions or places that are connected to these people, or how close they are in terms of dates to the people I'm trying to match with. I think that could be useful. Instead, usually today we have like tables, right? So where you need to actually go to the website and buy and even if you have other tools that help much better than these quick scripts or open refined with reconciles like Silk or other stuff, still I think that trying to support better these links to visual means would be very beneficial. Also because really the model is relational, but in the sense of graph, basically. So it's a whole other matter than seeing like a traditional relational table.
But yeah, on that point, if you talk about a graph, as I also said it yesterday, I really think that it would help if you more sit on the paragraph level, often the end paragraph level. Because now you get as a conclusion that many letters will be mixed. And what does that mean? And I think that's different from the book titles. I think it's more logical to map the subject headings of books with paragraphs of letters, rather than you say, oh, every letter is mixed. And then they get, in my view, a clearer picture of what the domains are of the couple of letters, than that you just see letters not yet. And I think that also the graph method enables you to put it better in this sort of system than the traditional ways. So it would be a refinement, so you could do an approximation, and you could say, well, for instance, 2/3 of a letter is philosophical, so let's call it philosophical, but then you still lose out on that third part. Or you could just map the paragraphs, and I think you get more granulation, and the graph model can handle that. You get a better image, I believe.
It would also be useful to be able to somewhat consider the formal criteria of letter writing, because I mean, the introduction paragraphs and final paragraphs are just composed in another way, so they have another tone and they are more likely to build relationships and not so much to convey.
More rhetorical. Yeah.
So yeah, by saying please find me topics in the first and last paragraphs means something than the paragraphs between.
Yeah, exactly. Get more granulation. I think it would be an even better picture. But the color codes are quite likely. You could apply the color codes to paragraphs instead to letters.
Thank you.
Well, with this final presentation, we wanted sort of to go through what from where we came to begin with, sort of our initial questions, and how we came about to answer this question of fulfill this aim and what we have been doing, and sort of our achievements, and then at the end also why our achievements was valuable for us as scholars as well, and sort of further aims in the future. But to begin with, there might be a bit repetitive from what we have been doing with a couple of things, but we managed. So the aim to begin with was to create a visualization tool that would allow you to explore data on early modern academic travels through several parameters. So geography, chronology, and a variety of photographical and family-related attributes. Actually, this is not entirely true. The first aim or the idea I came with was actually that only one prosopographical attribute. So it's sort of expanded through the period. I thought it would be so complex, but turned out to be possible. And the idea behind was to be able to explore in many ways your data that normal statistic and sort of normal or simple geographical visualization will not allow you to do, and also sort of to allow you to examine and explore bigger data sets. And yeah. So just to go through how we did this, we first of all, the first step was to explain to the designers what we actually wanted to do and what our needs and wishes were, and then we entered sort of a brainstorming process and came up with what would be the ideal version for such an exploration visualization tool. And then we came back. The third step was to get more real and what could we actually do with the data that we had. And then we came to the decision that we wanted to do two versions. So an ideal version, this would be designed in a static view if you have all the time and resources in the world. And then a second version, which was to be a demo version of an actually working version based on the provided data in order to prove provide the proof of concept that this would actually work. Yeah. So the main purpose of this tool should be, of course, to explore the data set, but it's through interconnected parameters, meaning that when one or more parameters were selected, all the other parameters would adjust accordingly, and this we succeeded rather successfully with. And if we go to the next one, so here we have all the parameters that we put in. So we have geography, so cities visited and country visited, and then of course we have chronology, and then we have all kind of prosopographical attributes, so scholarly divisions or the main division, you have subdivided into chairs, you have different kind of funding schemes, and before and after doctoral degree, the age and travel start, before and after appointment, and then of course you could have confession and languaging, and just with the data provided, you had at the end more or less 50 interchangeable factors. So this would really allow you to explore your data in many, many ways that you simply could not do by doing it in Excel or any other kind of, yeah. But of course we we were challenged with different things. And first of all, it was time spans. We did not, or the data did not provide sort of specific dates for each single visit, but only for certain periods. We were working in time spans, and then our designers came up with a new way of visualizing sort of time scale. I think, well, we will show you that later. And then we had problems with start and end dates. There are some uncertainties sometimes in the data when the travel actually started and when it ended, so that needs to be taken into account. Then we had an issue, I think it's touched on more fundamental issues of categorization of scholars and the challenges of duplicate, because some of these professors, especially in the early period of the period, possessed or changed chair through time, and that means that they also, when I created groups, also scholarly discipline, then they might, or they will appear in both of them, which has or gives you some statistical inaccuracies, I mean, sort of the ratio according to the total number, but according, or sort of in relationship to visualization, it didn't matter as much as because it was based on the travels. I think you might see that as well. If we go further, we have more issues. We had different indication for location. It meant that in the data sometimes it was written that this professor traveled to Germany, Holland, and England, and only have some cities for Germany. So we just know that he went to Holland and England, but not to which city. So how to take this into account when you want to explore your data. And then we had a design problem in the sense that we have many filters. So how to view all of this at the same time, so you have an idea how things change. We have to deal with that, and then of course the all returning issue of borders in early modern period when you're visualizing geography. This came out of the ideal version that we would like to have. In the ideal version, we would like to have that geography and the borders, political and professional borders, would be there, and of course change when you change the time scale. That would be very nice. If you go further, I think now you will take over and explain. This is sort of the static thing of the ideal version.
Yeah, again, we made two versions. One is that it's more meant to make to understand how the interconnected filter works, and then we try to expand a little bit on the elements that are on the interface. Okay, so as I said, like we started with this particular problem, so he has a specific dataset regarding a specific group of scholars, but we thought that these two could also help to work with other kind of dataset organized in the same way. So we thought to give like two options to the user that use this application. One is to upload the data, of course, need to be formatted in the same way, but also to try to like play around with other data sets. And this is the main interface and how it would look like, and it's divided in three parts. In the middle, we have the geographic view, that is the main one, but we also thought to produce different view of the main content that we get to that later. Then in the bottom there is the timeline that it either gives an idea of how different times were traveled, but also it uses a filter so the user can select a specific time frame in order to filter the data both in the geographic view and in the right filter. The idea of the filter here is that they are they work either as a way to filter the dataset, but also they already give an overview of the dataset, so they visualize the dataset. We decided to keep everything as with the less color as possible, and only to use the color for the main data that we want to visualize, which is the scholarly division, but still this has some problem that he mentioned before, because some scholars are categorized in different divisions, so that's a problem. So for now, we solve this problem adding a category. So because our dataset was very small, the one that we provide, but maybe we need to explore that a little bit more. Then the timeline. The timeline is we had this problem that we had a time span, but not really. Time span, and so we solved this kind of problem with making sort of stack bar that is also connected. So if the user kind of overlay with a specific year, you can also see how this how the segment is composed, and also get more information about that specific travel and this all these different works. Here the other problem that we have here is that we had we have information about cities, but also sometimes we only have information about the country, so we need to put that in the same space, let's say. and yeah, we saw this as the small label that tells you the instead of the city, only the country. Then we add the color in the geographic view only when you filter on a specific scholarly division, and so you can only see the data regarding to the scholars that are associated with a specific. Then to solve or kind of produce a different take on the geographic view, that is a bit problematic for the problem of the boundaries, and also this geographic view doesn't give you really the idea of how different cities are more connected to specific disciplines. We kind of produce different views that take away the geographic view, and it's basically a network of divisions and cities. So in yellow, green, and pink, you have the cities that in our data, which is very small, but this is kind of scale. The color one are the cities that are only traveled by scholars that are of a specific discipline, and in the middle you have all the mixed ones, so cities that are traveled by scholars that come from different disciplines. And I guess